there are many of our people who are thinking more deeply and more broadly, looking at it as it actually is, and are beginning to see it more in the international context and the relation that it has with the African struggle, a human rights struggle, or the struggle for human rights. And as such, we can then take it into the United Nations.
And bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to African Esquire TV. I am your host, Tierney Cherie, and this is also We Charge Colonialism. That's have to mention the organization. Today, we're doing a very special presentation. We're going to be talking about a very serious event that happened on the African continent, the Namibia Genocide. We have a number of people who are going to be joining us and giving us some insight. So first, I'll go to my guest. If you could just please say your name and also what you do as far as the liberation fight, and also if there's any organizations that you're affiliated with.
Okay, my name is Umbi Upi. I'm a radio and television journalist by profession. And right now I'm at the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation as the Chief Commercial Officer, but myself being of the victim group, which is the Nama and the Ovaherero tribes here in Namibia. I'm very much involved into the genocide issue. My son and I, and my husband also, we are busy producing a documentary, but mostly from the perspective of ourselves, a documentary on the genocide, the historical account thereof, as well as how it affected us, because we are the direct descendants of those victim groups. And so we are telling our story from the perspective of how it affected us, and also the impact thereof on our people, and also and what possible impact it will have still on our children and generations to come. And this is my husband, Gamane Karohe Upi. He also took my last name because he wants to make sure that the victim group, they remain intact. Yeah, so Gamane Karohe Upi, please introduce yourself. Today's our 20th wedding anniversary. So it's a great day. All right, Idol G.
And I'm a relationship counselor. In addition to be what they call a community activist and so on. So I'm a gender activist. So I'm mostly talking about healthier relationships, healthier bonds between human beings in different facets. Now, whether it's politics, religion, or whatever, we still need to get together.
And then Toivo?
Yes, absolutely. All right. So my name is Toivo Asheeke. I'm here in the U.S. right now. You know, my father is from Namibia. I'm from the north of the country, though, from the Oshirambo-speaking people is my father. But my mother is Afro-American, so we really have this, global Black life. Back home, I organize mostly with BLF, Black First Land First in South Africa. Here in the U.S., in New York City, I work mostly with Take Back the Bronx. It's an organization in the Bronx, New York City. As well as a number of formations. I also work with the Black Radical, that tyranny, and also I'm teaching at SUNY Purchase. Finished my PhD a few years ago. So yeah, that's me.
So thanks, everyone. Of course, any type of genocide is always a horrific event to talk about. And so we want to just paint the picture for everyone who does not understand the gravity of the situation, what particularly happened in Namibia that a lot of people might not be aware of. So if we could start just with the history of the colonization of Namibia and what actually led to there actually being a genocide of the African people there.
Well, as you may have heard or read history books, somewhere in the 19th century, towards the end of the 19th century, 1880s and so on, Europeans decided to want to have a piece of land to expand their empires. And I guess mostly because they saw Africans on the continent as docile people who may not, especially because if you remember 1880s, that's now a whole number of years after slavery. So they, starting from the 1520s and so on, they've had to acclimatize themselves to say or to think that we as blacks, we as Africans, we don't stand for anything, and we won't resist whatever, and we can be told or led or forced to do whatever. So when it came to them being really greedy for resources, yeah, you heard about the Berlin Conference in 1884, that then where they indicated that, hey, Africa is a pizza. Let's cut it up in different, and everyone gets a slice.
Yes.
And so that's what they pretty much did. And so when you look into that, Belgium, Germany, Britain, Italy, France, they all gave themselves pieces of Africa. That came to say that now that they legitimized carving up Africa in smaller pieces for themselves. They came on to say, yeah, now this is ours. Let's go and discover and lay our claim to it. Unfortunately for them, they came here and found people who were here, been here for eons, and people who said, no, this is our place. How can you come and just want to push us aside? And so when, especially in terms of the historical aspects, the Herero said, heck no, you can't just come into my yard and take over. That was seen as resistance. And being seen as resistance, the high powers that be dictated that, hey, make those people go quiet. And it was actually became an official declaration that said, make those people go quiet. And that's now being diplomatic. Actually, what they said, kill them all. Children, women, dogs, cats, kill them all, because they are standing in our way of taking whatever we want to take, because we declared ourselves the rightful owners. That's now Germany speaking. And so the resistance came, the Herero stood up, they fought, had skirmishes with Germans, won some battles and so on. The Namas came on to say, hey, look at what's happening to our brother over here. These people are a threat to all of us. So they joined in. So the declaration to eliminate Hereros came on 1 year, and another 1904, and another one came in the next year, aimed at the Namas. And what they did was they brought in their big guns, poisoned water worlds, disrupted life for all the people in Namibia per se, especially in the central areas.
I want you to come in here quickly. In 1904, when the extermination order was given by Lothar von Trotta, the great general that came from Germany.
What's great about it?
No, they called him like that, but it was not great. But that's how they called him in the history books. The great general Lothar von Trotta. Actually, he was also in Tanzania, in Eastern Africa, where he did the same things. And because he was so cruel and so hard, we thought they will send someone like him. And in 1904, at Odombudo Vintimba, that is a place near Oshinene in the eastern part of Namibia, he stood there and he read the declaration order that all the Hereros, children and women, will be eliminated. And he said that they are no longer German subjects and they will be killed. So that extermination order, why it was specific for the Hereros, it was even translated in Oshiherero, so that today when we ask for reparations, we ask that reparations should only be for the Hereros and for the Namas, because the Namas are the people who were speaking Dutch. That same extermination order was also translated in Dutch, so that the Namas can hear and understand that that extermination order is solely for them. It's aimed at targeting them. And it was so bad that they killed about 3/4 of the hereros. Out of 80,000 hereros, only 15,000 hereros remained. And from the Namas, out of the 20,000, only 10,000 remained. And what they did, they took cattle, they took land, they took everything from us, from our ancestors. And you can imagine if you take everything for us, and then that's why you will see a lot of people, when you look at my color even, I represent a lot of other heteros, because most of the men were killed and the women were there for to be raped and to give children that look like us. And therefore, you will see that because the heteros have a strong culture, that the culture survived. Even those who went to Botswana, they are a group. Today's about 100 to 150,000 heteros living in Botswana and South Africa. And they still practice their culture, which means the hero culture is a strong culture. It was spent, that 100 and plus years of colonization, of tribalism, of anything that really came our way. And when you look at us today, really, when you look at the psychological effects of what affects us today as a people, it's so sad, you understand? Because you as a hetero, you have lost land, you have lost cattle, you have lost your culture, you have nothing, you understand? And you even have lost numbers. Politically, you cannot even stand strong. And look at all that psychological and you have lost wealth. All that we have inherited is poverty. And even politically, you are nothing because you don't have numbers. The only thing that helps us today as heteros and namas is because we are a minority people, but we are a vocal minority. You understand? That is the thing that helps us today. And even Toivo can attest to it. You understand? We are a smaller number than most of the people here. Not most, but we are one of the smaller ones because we make about 7% of the population. And Namibia is only 2.5 million people. And we make only we are maybe 150,000 people, I think, in Namibia right now, according to the statistics. There are the ones like the whites who are maybe only 4% or lesser than that. Excuse me. But that is where we are. And today when we talk about reparations, we are not talking only about money. We are talking about, what goes into reparations. And when you study reparations itself, it's not about money. It's all the other things that goes around it. There are scholars that have written about what it means and what we ask when we're asking about reparations. Is to restore the whole people, to bring some dignity to these people, and to at least give something back that was taken away. It's not money, because money is something that can be replaced, really. And so I've said a lot in a nutshell, and I think I will give over to my husband to continue.
I think we have made a point already. Yes.
Toivo, you have anything you want to add?
No, it's simply that for people, if now it's new technology, you say we may be streaming and people may be listening to us. All I'm saying is that take a look at if someone comes, disrupt your life, throw you out of your house, and then come back later to want to apologize and offer you $10, when the value of whatever you lost, it's $1 million. Where is that? Where is the balance in that? And that's where, in contemporary times right now, there's still a lot of strife because Germany says, we want to apologize, but we will dictate how to apologize, and we will dictate how to compensate you, and we will dictate how long and in what fashion we're going to compensate you. And I'm saying that they are offering us $10, but what they took, generational wealth, all the number of generations that were disrupted from being the best people they could have been. You don't want to think of that. You want to, you see, and the politics of today is still so corrupt that you can go around Namibia and many other places where you see now in some other European countries, in South America, and even in America, a few months ago, people were trying to knock down statues of Confederate soldiers and things like that. But we have those type of things around here.
Standing.
And we are not at that point yet of saying down with these statues and down these memorial museums or whatever, but they are there. To me, it says that these were people who felt strongly that we are not human beings. We are not worthy. So they actually felt and still feel like it was not a big deal. What we took from you, you couldn't have gotten anyway, anyhow, without us. So if we offer you peanuts, what's the big deal? Take it and move on with life.
Yeah, and we are sitting with the most important problem that the people don't realize is we are sitting with a generational poverty. This is not a joke. These children of the Germans and all the people who took from us, they've inherited land. Today you can do something with that land. They've inherited money. They've inherited our ancestral land. And so they, from generation to generation, they can come here and say black people are lazy, heroes are like that or like that. But they have inherited the generational wealth from which was taken from our parents, and our people have inherited generational devastation and poverty. It is a shame. It is a shame that even today, as leaders, we cannot even see that. We cannot even see what is happening. I mean, we as black people, we are still in a mental bondage. Even our leaders who have been educated in the United States, alongside people like Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, all those people who stood for righteousness, who stood for national black nationalism, all those people who taught us that you have to get yourself out of that mental bondage that you are in. But even our leaders today, they don't even trust the minds of the blacks. They still rely on outsiders. They still rely on China and white professionals. We are professionals in our own right, but they will rather, it goes so bad that they will rather ask people from Europe or for who to come for consultations, and are paid lots of money, while we as even experts in our country, they will never recognize you. And I mean, it is so deep down ingrained in our black people, it's a shame. I don't even know myself as a black leader today that I will really die and I will leave this legacy behind that is continuing, where we are in mental bondage. What is that? How is it difficult to see that what we are perpetuating is that colonialism that that's in our mind, for us to feel, that self-hatred as black people? It is a shame. It is really a shame. We continue to perpetuate it. I don't know when will it stop, and it's done at the highest level in this country.
No, absolutely. Again, there's nothing more I have really to add at all to that. All I would just say is maybe to bridge some of the conversations we're about to have, because we have another colleague who's coming in to speak about some of the things happening in the Okavango River basin, and some of the discussions there on land drilling and shale drilling, etc. And even the San people. So the San people also have their own claims to land in certain ways, and some of their issues. Negotiating with the state, the Swapo-led government, but very much the idea of the state is really some of the problems we have here. But mostly what I would add is, again, the Germans were very, very clear. They wanted Lebensraum. Lebensraum is something that if you know your World War II history, right, your discussions on the Holocaust, right, Lebensraum did not begin with them going after, the Russians, the Eastern Front, the Eastern Europe and in Russia, and then the genocide that occurs in those areas there. It begins in the African continent, right? It was explicitly to take land from the Herero and Nama, to give it to white people, and importantly, to take their cattle. Because the Herero cattle has always been the wealth of this people, right? And so it was to take that away. And so any idea of reparations, because reparations is a very clear word. Reparations means to repair damage done. So if I took your land, I took your cattle, I must now give it back. And we also must add, it's very simple. It's not really, the only thing we may say is we now want 100 years of interest rate. So now we really want it all back. And the reality is that if you look at the places, for example, where the concentration camps were. So the concentration camps, the actual ideas for what Auschwitz and those things in Europe would become were now thought through on the African continent first. And so even someone like Goering is one of the head generals in World War II, but many people like that, the Nazis had ties to the engineers and the architects and the military minds who were now thinking through and executing genocide against the Namibian and the Nama people, right? So the linkages are very, very, very clear, right? These things begin in Africa. Even M.S. Césaire, the Martinican scholar, he says, he was very, very clear saying, the Holocaust, of course, is horrible, what happens in Europe. But the reality is that it's horrible because it happened in Europe. For African peoples and people of color, we've been dealing with genocide the last 400 years. So the main reason why it's a huge thing is because it's happening in Europe with white people, not on the African continent where you can just forget about it, right? And I think so. I think it's very, very important to understand that land has to be given back. Cattle must be given back. Those places where the concentration camps were put to this day, in places, even you have places in Swakop, places in Luderitz, places in Walvis Bay, they're still German owned. They're still German owned. They actually even have built on top of some of those like cells, those prisons where the Herero and Nama were kept before they would go to Shark Island or they would go somewhere else. It's now maybe Womenbrock is maybe over that, some like convenience stores, right? Or some white owned thing which silences that history. And so now you have generations of people, particularly my age, and I'm in my mid-30s and younger, who are not as aware of the Herero genocide because Herero Nama genocide because it's not being taught in schools the way it needs to be. And the last thing I would maybe say is that it's important for the international, the Black international, if you will. Most of what the global Black solidarity with Namibia will be around the struggle against apartheid, the struggle against white settler colonialism, and of course SWAPO, the Southwest Africa People's Organization, will take much of the attention of people. But what is important to understand is that the liberation struggle, there were for me there were 2 or 3 liberation struggles, waves of liberation struggle. The first one is the Herero and the Nama, right? The second one is what SWAPO begins to lead in the 1960s and going further, right? The third one is probably the one I think we're in right now. But the second one is important because that's what people now think about, right? Because I'm Oshiwambo speaking, we are the majority ethnic group in Namibia, and so by a long measure, we're very much the dominant, at least I think 50% of the population, if not more. And so because of that, our discourse on how the nation is to be created has dominated, and because of that, there has been a silencing of some of the other struggles amongst the peoples of Namibia, and that's something that we have to reverse. And the ruling party has not done so, right? Has not done so. There have been attempts by a few people here and there, but overall, it has not been what is done. And that's why I say in this third wave that you find ourselves in, myself, Ina, Maria, who's going to come on in a little bit, and others, we have a new mission to kind of complete and to write to complete the revolution, if you will, because it's still incomplete. Right. So those are 3 more I want to say, kind of bridge it in that kind of a sense. And also the idea of this. So one last thing to say also is one of the reasons why the Namibian government felt justified in making this agreement is because the idea is that of states negotiating with each other. I think it was last time we were having a discussion that we were talking about, Germany was saying, well, we don't want to negotiate with an ethnic group within a state. We're going to negotiate with the state.
For Jewish people.
But they did it, of course, with the Jews and other different people. They've done
Only
it before.
3 groups of Jewish people.
Yes, they've done it with different groups.
I'm very happy to hear you actually even having these discussions, and even in your lectures, you are a professor, you are a young person, you are a Namibian, and I can see you care really a lot of Namibia, and we need more people like you, because it is what it is, you understand? And what you are talking about is really what is happening. There is no two ways about it. You cannot undo history. This is history. We can talk here, we are angry or what, but the history remains the same. It doesn't change. And at the end of the day, we have to make the right decisions for the greater good. Because at the end of the day, we are all Namibians, we are Africans, we are Black people. I mean, we have really been taken for a ride, and we have to, to bring justice and to turn the things around. And one thing that you said before my husband came in, you talk about the 11th round. And I know, Toivo, because you know what it means. Not everyone knows it, because it's also a German word. Just wanted to clarify that one. You are right. They were looking for 11th round. It means just because they didn't have enough space. In the German language, it just means the space is not enough. They needed more space. So they wanted to come to Africa also in order to send their people there. Yeah. Because sometimes we talk because we know. So educated one's wrong. in that language, the German language. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I wanted to add to is what I wanted to add to that short briefly is that sometimes we also lose touch with when we hear the word apartheid and not knowing and not connecting it with apartheid is nothing else but segregation that took place in the Americas. The whole thing of white, non-white, the whole thing of Jim Crow laws, that's apartheid. So sometimes people hear apartheid and they think South Africa, they think Southern Africa, they think Namibia. But that's the same thing that was happening right there in Washington, D.C. and Virginia and wherever, in Alabama. It's the same thing. So we have a lot in common.
Yeah, Tyranny.
Yes. I'm actually going to bring in Inna right now. So I'm happy that you brought up the reparations issue that just came up, particularly for the audience. I've seen a lot of people in the Pan-Africanist community who were almost celebrating whenever this news was broke that Germany was going to offer, I believe it was $1.3 billion to the victims of the genocide in Namibia. No, was it a different number?
No. I'm only shaking my head because the award is for the country, not even for the victims.
Right, but the way that it was framed in the media was that, Germany's paying $1.3 billion. And a lot of people celebrated it, I think, because one, I think they didn't actually read about the negotiations, but two, I think African people, I don't know of us actually getting reparations in any type of sort of way. And I think because of that, a lot of us, we grasp at crumbs. So, to set the record straight, that was not reparations to the genocide victims.
It was not.
We're still waiting for the 40.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for the 40 acts and mules.
Yeah, again, what the number really was if you look at the 1.35 billion US dollars, essentially what that is it's roughly equivalent to Germany's aid they've already been giving to Namibia since independence in 1990. And the idea is that it's a fund that is going to be given, it's money that's going to be made available over time for social programmings and some other things, et cetera, that Germany actually already does. But it's to be managed by the state. It has not been negotiated directly with the Herero or the Nama peoples in frames that they need and on their terminologies, right? Which is what we said earlier. So that's just more to get precise about what we're talking about. It's like hypothetically, it's like if England were to say they were going to give the Black people reparations for their enslavement, and they gave the money to the U.S. government, and the U.S. government was supposed to now distribute that through like scholarships or hospitals or whatever. You would, of course, distrust the government for doing so. Now, of course, I don't want to compare the Namibian with the U.S. government. There are differences, particularly, but the idea is that it was not designed directly with those who were survivors of this in mind. I mean, it was not dictated by them. It was them saying what they're going to do. And I believe there was a negotiation behind closed doors to do this, particularly that we're in the COVID pandemic. And I believe that, and financially Namibia is struggling around this. And I think that that money is some ways used around that. But maybe if someone wants to jump in and get more clear about that, it's more of just the logistics of it. It actually is like a fund, like a big fund to be given over time. And that's part of where the rejection from the Herero and the Nama community has been. Is that it is not actually with us, it is with the state, which we do not trust in certain ways, given what we've just talked about.
And what we are talking about is they offered a 1 point something billion, when we roughly says they owe us trillions.
Yeah. And I think that also begs a question. What do we do as African people who are inside of these neo-colonial states that are, I would say, allowing the imperialists to kind of co-opt our movements or try to replicate it inside of a way that's more palpable to the dominant society? What do we do as far as those who are struggling for actual and true freedom, liberation, and to actually be repaired for the violence that was done to our people?
Yo, Ina, do you want to take that? You've been because you just
And
jumped in.
I'm
So
so
you
sorry.
want to give
Please
Ina?
introduce yourself first.
Yeah, yeah. You need to
Yes, and
introduce
your
Ina
organization
to this.
and the work that you do, and then yes, come speak to that.
Okay. All right. I'm Ina Maria Shikongo, frontline defender, activist, artist, mother, and also one of the coordinators of Fridays for Future Windhoek. And yeah, we have been very active since last year. It's going to be a year soon. Incredible. Well, we have been trying to raise awareness in regards to this company from Canada that is here to repeat history. Just to put it like that in short.
Yes.
You know, I think when it comes to reparations, we know that this is a trend that has been going on from the time when they came here with the boats. They call it the conquest. Yeah, it is not a conquest. Hmm? That's the genocide. So let's just look in history. When we conquered the Americas, just put it like when we went to commit genocides in the Americas, when we went to wipe out the people's cultures, the people's traditions, so we can have the life that we deem is fit for us. And everybody that does not look like us is, yeah, they are worth nothing, basically. So this is a repetition. All of this colonialism, everything that they're bragging. Even, when you go to the museums, even, you go to the museums, my dear, you will find the artifacts from your country that you don't even know about. Hmm?
You can say that
How
again,
many
yes.
of us? Yeah, I mean, even like with our traditions. I mean, like I went to Helsinki to the Missionary Museum and I was looking at this artifacts. I was like, what? This is like part of it is part of our traditions. And we can talk about the Namibian traditions, or we can go back to the Sumerians. You have the doors in the British Museum. Are they in the Louvre? What are they doing there? Yeah?
Yes.
You have the mummies that are being taken from their birthplaces to be shown in the museum. That is like disrespect of culture. So this trend of colonialism is something that is deeply rooted, and society has been conditioned to accept it as well, because that is what we are being taught. We are being taught to glorify these conquests when in reality they did not bring development. In fact, they brought destruction. So even when we talk about reparations, we need to talk about decolonization, you know? So we as people of color, or people that are completely different from the others, the ones who deserve it all, hmm? We deserve justice. And we can just go back into history and then we can, start ticking, okay, here you did this, okay, here. That is how they shot themselves in the legs, you know? So they must stop bragging about the conquest. And this is also why we need system change. And system change, again, we're talking about colonial work. And it is in terms of history. And even like, because I come from a fashion background, sometimes you see these ladies on the catwalk. And then you realize that, hey, but that is from my country. But you are not being given that recognition that, hey, this is from the Himba tribe, Wakanda forever, things like that. So until when are we as society going to move in this specific current where we can see that the past has been very destructive and we cannot continue in that manner, because it is time that, like Tierney said, reparations are needed, but it is just not in terms of financial aid. Okay, do we really need that? It is not only in terms of, let's say, rehabilitation of ecosystems, but it is also in the rehabilitation of our cultures and our people. We want to live dignified lives, but all of that is being taken away because the system keeps on pushing the agenda that we are not human beings. Basically, that is what they're saying in short.
No,
And Ina Maria, I just wanted to add something there because you are talking about what I like. You are talking about when you go to museums, you saw those things like the dolls, the Himba dolls, and what. I also saw them in the museums in Germany. You understand? You see things about yourself that you didn't even know, you didn't even see here. And you know what is the sad part? When you go today to all the museums, I mean, I've been filming at the Swakopmund Museum, Keetman's work, and you go to Shark Island, there's nothing, not one word that they talk about the reparation. Everything is a whitewash. It never happened. I know the genocide. It never happened here. It's not in one museum, not a single word. When you go to the Swakopmund Museum, you will see the Schustrooper, the original clothing is in there. Everything, the real clothes, the guns, everything that they use to kill our people. But they say nothing, not one word about genocide. How is it they can whitewash something like that? When you go into history books, there's nothing about the genocide. When you go about memorials, today we are 30 years later, our country is independent. You have nothing that stand to say memorial what. They are trying to put something there to assist her, but I don't know what it was, but we will see what will come out of that. But nothing to remember the genocide, nothing. And that is so sad, really, because how do you move forward? You have no memory. When I went to Rwanda, they had the genocide in 1994. And they commemorate all the genocides of the century. And when you go to the Rwanda Genocide Museum, the first hall that you walk in is the Herero and the Nama genocide. They have dedicated a whole museum to the genocide in Namibia, while Namibia, the country itself, doesn't recognize their own genocide. Isn't that sad? I stood there to take pictures, me and my colleague, Nanu says, to take pictures. She's a Nama and I'm a Herero. And we were so saddened that our genocide has the museum in Rwanda. It is recognized in that country. It's the first museum of the 19th century. In our country, there's nothing to show that there was a genocide. It is sad. And this is the mental bondage I'm talking about. And the thing of people not seeing the greater picture and not having the leadership, not having emotional intelligence to see that at the end of the day, I'm not a Herero, you are not a Vambu. We are all Africans, we are all Namibians. You understand? We have to cry the same tears. If we are crying for Kasinga, like we are crying for Kasinga, we have to cry for the genocide. We have to cry for all the tears, because the Ovambo tears and Hero tears and Nama tears, they are not different. They are the same tears coming from the same people. Let's not our leadership decide these tears are more important. That's why I'm always wondering, in essence, then the pain is not universal. If I cannot feel the pain of Toivo because he's a Vambu, and Toivo cannot feel my pain as a Herero, then I cannot even feel for South Africa. I cannot even feel for Pan-Africanism. I cannot even talk about Pan-Africanism. I cannot talk even about slavery, about reparations of other people in the world, other Black people like myself. If my own people cannot see my pain, where I am here in Namibia. And that's thing that has to be something that has to be taken at a higher level, where we have the enough emotional intelligence and to look at the greater good, because it's an unethical conduct to divide people and to say your pain is important, the other pain is not important. That is not right. No. There is something wrong with us Black people.
For sure.
We cannot go on like this. This is sick. And
If
that's
you
what's
mind,
happening in Kavango. In Kavango.
Oh yeah, no. I just wanted to say something quick, just to make the connection with the command, just to do some quick connection things of what Tyranny was saying, because this is all on point. So apologies just for jumping in. But when you talk about, we've talked about the museums, we're talking about our cultures, our peoples. I wanted to bring it back just to the land question really quickly to make that connection between actually our both groups now who are here. When for those who don't know Namibia, right? When you drive from, say, Windhoek and you're driving north to the north of the country, you will see fenced off land that goes for kilometers after kilometers after kilometers, owned by one white man, or maybe by a absentee landlord who then maybe he's even there, and they will hire maybe a Herero or Nama or Shrambo speaking workers, and they mistreat them horribly. Right? Even in our country where we have stronger labor laws than most, they're still allowed to, with impunity, to do certain things to their workers and to overwork them and to mistreat them. And all this land is owned by white people, and that's part of the poverty that was being talked about earlier. Is that we have generational poverty that's been hitting us because of the lack of land access, right? So all that land needs to be taken away and given back to our people. It's very simple, and our people have long memories. We know whose land and who was here and who is living over there and who was married to whom, etc. And that is kind of the project that we're talking about. But what we see happening, and this is where Ina Maria is coming in also, because what we see also with this Canadian company is we see them also having a disregard for African land rights in cooperation with the government in ways in their drilling and in their search for oil in the Okavango, which itself is causing harm to the earth and to the soil, which itself is ignoring the San people and other peoples who live in that area, who have been living in that area for a very long time. And so again, a disregard of land rights of our own African peoples, right? So we're seeing this division between the state and the nation in many ways. The state is now operating in a different kind of a function, trying to be European and white. And then the nation, if you're unaware of what's going on in our country, again, it's a huge country. We don't have that many people. So sometimes it's difficult. And many of our people, again, we still are a rural people. Most of our people are living in the village, in the rural areas. We're not around media, cell phones, internet coverage everywhere. So it's not like in other places, right? So it's hard sometimes to get some of this information out, which is why I really wanted it that we have people from Namibia who are on the ground coming here to kind of speak on this, because sometimes us, in the diaspora, there's more access to technology and more access to certain things that our voices sometimes can be overbearing. But what I wanted to more say is that the connection you're seeing between the land sovereignty and the need for redistribution, the idea, Tierney, to your first question about neocolonialism, is that it goes to what both folks have been saying, everybody's been saying today, is that you have got to decolonize. Because if you don't decolonize, there will be no reparations, because you'll just get $1.3 billion from the Germans in a fund. That's not decolonization. That's simply a bribery. Right? That's not decolonization. And so in the context of fighting neocolonialism, we actually have to fight on that kind of stage, in that kind of a fashion. And if you take the global part of it, that Canadian company that is trying to do things in Namibia, one of the guys who works with those people, he's big in the fracking movement. He does a lot of the fracking stuff in the United States. I actually used to do protests against that guy when I was in Binghamton, New York, because in Pennsylvania they allow fracking, in New York they did not, and we were fighting to have it not be allowed in New York State, right? So here he is again from Binghamton, New York. He's now in Namibia.
Yeah,
that's the global connection right there.
Let's go into that though, because that's a very important story. And I remember when we had a conversation with you and Toivo, you said this constitutes genocide for the people who are living on this land. So could you briefly, with the time that we have left, just describe what exactly is happening currently with this Canadian company that's trying to seize the land? Is that in Namibia?
Okay. Long story short, so this company, Recon Africa from Canada, Vancouver, but now they've moved to Calgary, we got a license for the Kavango Basin in 2015. Okay, we only found out last year, before the drill was supposed to arrive, that they were going to start drilling. And since then, we've been making noise. But what has been quite interesting is that since 2015, right, they started doing what we were telling them or reminding them that they have not done, which is why obviously I'm not going to stop, because, they're dancing to my music, the puppet master. I love myself. But anyway, so this company they have the license to this basin, and there are so many things that have not been respected. Again, community engagement. The communities have not been insulted. They only started the community engagements in 2021. February. In Kavango, they only saw 9 people from the village of Kawe, and they had to move from Kawe to Rundu. And mind you, in those roads, not everyone has a car, and you need a specific type of a car, and you need to pay for fuel, So not everybody from that village, where they have plus minus 4,000 people, could go to this meeting. 9 people from that village. How many of those were women? How many of those were youths? How many of those were elders from those 9 people? Is that community engagement? No. And also when we look at the Kavango Basin, because it is going over several countries, Angola, Namibia, Botswana, how many of those people have been consulted? None of them. Okay. So this is what is happening. Whatever especially knowing the history of Namibia and fish rod stories, I am personally telling myself that it is a shame to literally sacrifice this place for few people to benefit. Because when you look at what is happening, the communities themselves, they are being kicked off their lands. This guy Andreas, when he was on Sky News, you could see that he didn't even have access to his own field anymore. And then CNN came, he was smiling. Ha, okay, we don't know what happened there. And then the second guy again, he's got now a lawsuit coming up with LAC, and he is challenging it. It's like, no, but that is my field. And so how many more fields are they going to take from these people? And mind you, our people are rural people. We are not saying that we are poor. People must stop saying that we are poor. This is why decolonization is very important. We are not poor. We know how to live with our land and our desert and how to survive, which is why I'm calling it a genocide, because the activity alone of removing people from their land where they grow food is condemning them to poverty. Where are these people supposed to go? And then on top of that, here they are saying that the Omatako River is dry. How can the Omatako River be dry? This is a so-called professional company. They call themselves professional, but they don't even understand that in dry conditions, the rivers will never flow on top because the water will just evaporate underneath the ground, which is why we have the biggest water basin in the world, because our climate is, it is accustomed already. And now they're telling people that the river has not been flowing. If this is the river that is also supplying the Fonbach, is Recon Africa drunk? I'm sorry. There are amateurs who don't know what they're doing. They think that they're living in the days of Buffalo Bill where they could buy New York for $1. But in these days, they can't. So if now imagine, because they're drilling along the Omatako, right? This Omatako, it flows upstream. And then it goes into the Kavango River. And the Kavango River comes from the Kwando in Angola. It goes into the Kavango and then into the Kavango Delta. So if you are taking the water from the river that feeds the Kavango River that's supposed to go to the Kavango Delta, obviously you are busy taking water that is supposed to go somewhere already naturally. Isn't that like common logic? That is common logic, because they use up a lot of water. And then also the mud drill pits are not lined. They are saying that they are using organic fluids. They are not even providing the name of that fluid. What is that fluid? We want to know, because we've never heard of it. Many geologists are now wondering, what is this organic fluid all about? Why are they not telling us what organic fluid they're using? So meaning that, when the sludge comes up, basically, it sits in this basin. So if it has toxins, because we don't know, because they're busy lying, greenwashing about the organic stuff that they're using, and then it goes into the water system. Most when it rains, whatever is on the ground, it goes into the water tables eventually. And I mean, like we said, our water systems are underground. So,
yes. I'm sorry. You can wrap up.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So they risk contaminating our underground water sources. And in the times of extreme drought, we also get water from that side in Windhoek. So now when you look at Kunene region, where it has been hit by drought, you have 10 areas in Namibia that have not received rain in 10 years. And then you see the Kavango Basin the Kavango region and the Zambezi, they have potential to become food baskets, to supply our country with food. And that is now being given to some pimps from Canada so they can extract 120 billion barrels of oil, a sixth of the carbon budget. And even today, the IPPC released its report, and they're saying climate change is here. But we can turn it around. But for that, we need to act now. And one of the many solutions is keep it in the ground. It's so simple. And by keeping it in the ground, it doesn't mean that, oh, you will be reducing emissions. So, so we don't have the wildfires in Europe and the floods. No, it basically means that you will help us save innocent lives on our side of the planet. That is what it means for us. So even forget about the emissions. For us, it is about saving our lives, saving our lands, and stopping the trend of colonialism. That is what it's about for us.
And I want to, if you could also send some articles, I'll put them in the description so that people can learn more about this. I know we're like tight on time. If I was going to ask if everyone could we're talking about, different issues. Obviously, we're talking about the issue of land in the current sense and also reparations for a genocide that was done. Could you advise, what do you feel what needs to happen around these issues as far as African people? How could we pull together and support the Herero and Namnama? How could we pull together and support the issue of someone seizing land from Namibia for fracking? How could we pull together for these types of issues?
To me, it's very simple that we need to recognize that we very much still have the same common enemy, and an enemy that does things not to benefit us. 120 plus years ago, they invaded Namibia and removed people from their lands and cattle and all of that. Fracking in the Kavango, but it's still the same thing. We're still the same kind of people with still the same kind of mindsets. So the awareness Maria is talking about, but a bit assertive type of the learning of people, because as we are speaking, the one thing that stands out for me is that the normal local person does not see land as their property. It's like government property, and government is not us. And so when government does whatever, it's like a favor to the locals, when it's supposed to be, they are supposed to be public servants. So the awareness to and educate people on what do they actually own. If somebody comes and gives you $10, but the person is actually owing you 1,000, where is your knowledge to say that, no, this is just a drop in what you owe me? Don't think I should see you as a celebrity or as a savior because you are giving me $10 when you owe me 10,000. That kind of education needs to happen.
And I agree there with my husband, really, because in that sometimes those things need to be done from school, in the curriculum, to make the people really aware what the value of certain things and exactly what he's talking about, and other things that we talk about, especially the genocide and things like that, And I'm very proud of Ina Maria. I've seen her, really fighting for this, and I think she should continue. And it's a tough fight, but it's something admirable. And
but the whole idea about being colonized, conversations like this are very tough to make happen here locally. The resources, the assertiveness of people, the opportunities, the atmosphere, the environment, there are forces that says, no, we can't have this. No, because now if you do this,
you are stigmatized.
You are stigmatized. You are attacking government. You are a rebel rouser. So now we have platforms coming from America, but our own. Where is that? So that's why the need for the education, whether we are under a tree or in a big hall, for us to talk about these things. Who are we? What do we own? And why are we owed? Why do they owe us reparations now and back in the past? How much were we denied through the genocide? How much were we denied through Bantu education? How much were we denied through apartheid? We have not reconciled ourselves with those things.
And even when Ina Maria, she makes with the analogy, what she's saying today is so powerful for me. When she says this is a repetition of the genocide, you understand? We are staring it in, we are looking at it, but the sad part is that we are not seeing it. You understand? It's like she's seeing something and we are not seeing it. We have gone through it. Now the Kavangos must go through it again. Other parts of Namibia must go through it again. And then after hundreds years, then we say, oh, that was a genocide. While there are people who are saying it must be stopped.
Right now.
It must be stopped. It can't go on like this. This is not right. It's unethical. It's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Maria, Ina?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Umbi. But I mean, also when looking at how it was done, it was not ethical. And also, people always say that we need development. Yes, we need development, but we don't need that kind of development. The thing is, if you look at our people, like especially like the Kavango people, they have the land. If you just give them extra skills, just a little bit of extra skills, even like how to do business, with the SMEs compete or something, teach them how to do books, and then you link them up directly to the market. They will not come to Windhoek. They will be there selling their produce and supplying ShopRite. So it is because we are not investing in the people, we are investing in other projects where the money is just coming in like this. We are not investing in the people. Even if you look at the youth centers today, what are the youth centers doing? What are they doing in terms of even stimulation, especially like in the villages? There is nothing going to the villages. Yes, you can see your ambulance developing, but go to Korihas, Okakarara, you're like poor people. So even like even when Umbi was saying this thing of wanting to like glorify the history of Swapo as the history of Namibia, it is wrong. I mean, okay, I was born in exile. I was born in a Swapo refugee camp. Papa was he's a hero, hero's acre, but it's that is not our history. And me being an artist and me being interested in history, I find it sad that I need to go to the archives so I can find out that, for example, the crown of the Overherero people, it was similar to the Overhimba people, but just completely different. So now, like even like when I look at Jan Jonker, I don't know if it was Afrikaner, I think, the one who wrote one of the very first texts of decolonization. Why are we not talking about that history? Because we have a history of resistance that dates back way before the liberation struggle that Swapo is talking about. And that is what is basically, okay, not really responsible for dividing, but they are killing our roots. When you don't talk about what really happens in history, you kill your ancestors because you're not talking about them. And we need to talk about it because then we lose ourselves. We don't know who we are anymore. We come from a history of resistance. Even if you look at Shamwaha, those people, they had spirits. But why are we not talking about them? Why are we only talking about one part of history? So, like decolonization is like, especially like when we talk about Namibia, we need to heal as a nation. We did not heal. In South Africa, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Here, we did not have it. So obviously, everyone is just carrying it inside. And then again, our leaders, they need to stop copying the West, because we can like turn the situation around if we start listening to our own people. Because if you go and sit down, for example, if you want to learn how to do proper patchwork, okay, fine, maybe someone will go to some academy there. Go and sit with an old Nama lady. She will show you things that you would have never known. And these are people where in some countries they are given honoraries. But here, we don't even recognize that. We don't even recognize or even try and understand, why did we start, wearing patchwork if we are a leather nation? Why?
Yeah.
So What are the stories between these patterns? So it is basically reviving our history and stop following a system that is actually responsible for our own destruction as a as a as a people, as a cultural people, but also, really embrace our Africanism and embrace who we are, embrace our past and learn from it and not repeat the same mistakes. That is why we don't want no bloody oil drilling there. It is the home of our San people. Hello. It is our sacred place, the Tsodilo Hills. It is that's like the holy sacred place. So if it is sacred to the sun, then what about us if we all come from the sun? You know? What I think is this ancestral respect, and you cannot say that just because you are non-Vambos, or that is a non-Vambo a spiritual home, we are they can have it.
Oh, that's all that is facts. All that is facts. All that is facts. Just to respect, I know Tyranny's time. I know Tyranny she has a meeting in like 10 minutes. So we to quickly wrap up. What I would also just say, maybe also for the global Black community who we are speaking to, right, is that land struggles is important also in Black America. Right, you have a long history of Black American land ownership. Many of those who escaped slavery, many of those who were able to save up money to kind of purchase their freedom, many who worked with the indigenous Native American peoples, the First Nation peoples, when they ran away from slavery. And that land also throughout the U.S. South right now is being taken. Right, I'm in the Bronx right now. They're trying to kick poor Black and Latinx people out of New York City to send them where God knows where they don't care, so they can move in rich white people and bulldoze the ghetto. So if you're fighting for land, that's land struggles right there, then you're also fighting for the Herero and the Nama. Right? It's also then to understand, for example, like in Colombia, for example, you have a long history of African peoples, Black peoples who've been there for 400, 500 years. They were about 10 years ago, 10 years ago, they also were having an assault on their land by the gold mining companies who wanted to kick them off their land so they can mine gold at an industrial kind of a pace and to destroy their natural ecosystems in the process. They had to fight against that as well. Right. So we need to understand there is an assault on Black people in a global sense, even now in South Africa, right? South Africa, they have their Truth and Reconciliation. Still, the minority white population still owns about 2/3 to 3/4 of the land in South Africa. 2/3 to 3/4. They still, if you go right now to Eastern Cape and you go down to rural Eastern Cape, right, you will see that the Black people are still living in townships outside of the city, and they have to commute to work to come into even the small towns. Right, in King Williamstown, where Steve Biko was born, in these different kinds of places. So land redistribution is a Black issue. It is a spiritual issue. It is an economic issue. It is a cultural issue, and it is a we have to live issue. Right? It is as what Tina is saying. So that's what I think we have to really understand about land and the white supremacist heteropatriarchal capitalism. It wants to kick us off of our land. And again, for us, land has never been a commodity for us. Land has been always communally owned with many of our people. And that is the kind of logic that we need to bring to reorganize and to fight back and to build a new society that the white people also will benefit from too, because they also are destroying their own earth. So they will get freedom too when they follow us. So that I think is what I would like also to say for the global Black community is to understand where you are fighting right now. So like in the US, you must be in alliance with the indigenous people who are fighting against this fracking and the oil pipelines and the shale drillings that are happening between the US and Canada. You have to be standing with them. And that is how you also stand for the Herero and the Nama and for the San and for our comrades in Colombia and elsewhere. So that's kind of what I wanted to say with that. And Tyrion, I know you get the last word. Sorry, we've taken a lot of your time.
No, this could have gone on another hour. I really love hearing from all of you, and you really drove it home. I think land is absolutely an African issue for each and every single one of us. So thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to post the contact information for each of the speakers today inside of a pinned comment so that you can find out more about them. And also, as I said, and I'm going to ask you if you have any articles you want to share on that fracking issue so that people can hopefully rally and support and join in what you're doing. I'm going to also post that as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.